I call this meeting of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. We'll start with our priorities. Director Gosa, would you please read those for us?
The Davenport School Board establishes the following priorities to ensure the academic success of all students. Provide leadership and direction to improve the overall learning environment in our classrooms, schools, and district, including the health, safety, security, and happiness of students and staff. Direct and support actions, programs, and activities which reduce the impacts of poverty on our students, their families, and our community.
Thank you very much. Director Hayes, would you please read our mission and vision statements?
I'll be happy to do so. Our mission statement is to enhance each student's abilities by providing a quality education enriched by our diverse community. Vision statement is education that challenges conventional thinking, prepares all students to compete in a global society, and inspires our students, parents, staff, and community to answer the question, what if?
Thank you very much. Superintendent Tate, we have a showcase tonight.
Yes, Madison Elementary School, and Principal Millenhausen is here. Thank you for coming tonight, Steve.
Good evening. And I'm Steve Millenhausen, the principal at Madison Elementary School, and I will say we are very excited tonight to be able to showcase a program or multiple programs that we feel are essential and an integral part of Madison Elementary School. So 5 years ago when I got to Madison, we had an after-school program that was a fee-based, primarily fee-based program. It had about 15 students in it. Thanks to a 21st Century grant, we were able to expand that enrollment to about 65 to 70 students in our after-school program. And we also expanded that into our summer program as well. So with me tonight, I have my school SAM, Bob Schnaden, and he is going to come up and introduce some of our staff and our Madison families and students, and he's going to talk about not only our after-school program but our summer program as well, and then we'll entertain questions at that point. All right, Bob.
Okay, thanks, guys. My role, or one of the main roles for me in the summer, is I facilitate the summer school program. We have 4 components that we do with the Stepping Stones program, one being the summer school program. It runs June 5th through August 3rd. It's 32 days. Last year we had 78 kids apply, and 65 of those children enrolled in our actual summer school program. We had a daily average attendance of 91%. 7 of our students, which were about 10% of them, actually had perfect attendance in our summer school program. It's kind of a unique program. It's run by Madison teachers for the Madison kids. So the relationships are there. We just take it and we just move on to the next level. Our schedule is pretty interesting as well. We start each morning with a morning meeting, go through a social skill or a life skill. We did reading groups. We did some launch and some science activities. Iowa State Extension. They had some gym time, lunch, and it was over at noon. Once a week, we would take our students out into the community to experience all the programs that our community had to offer as well. They would do some unique field trips. We would go roller skating, mini golf. We went to Circa 21. We took them bowling. We went to the Quad City Botanical Center, the Putnam, and they went to Rave Cinemas and the Helium Trampoline Park. It's exciting for the kids to leave the building to go out, and it helps us teach them the social skills needed to be successful students, not only in school but in the community. We had another program this year that we added to our summer school program, and it was the Wraparound Program. We never had it before. It was with St. John's Church. 35 of our students out of the 65 that were in our summer school program participated in the Wraparound Program. St. John's Church provided the space, and Stepping Stones provided the coverage. This unique program allowed students to have a structured PM and continued to involve them in the community. It also allowed parents to continue to work and not worry about their children because they were in a quality structured program versus just going to some daycare. A third component we have at Madison, which I know other schools do as well, is our Kinder Jump program. And I do have a kindergarten teacher that's going to talk a little bit about that when I'm finished. But we had about 20 preschool children that were planning on going to Madison School that attended our Kinder Jump program that allowed them to experience what the big school was like. And I'll have Barb talk a little bit more about that. And then one other component we have is our after-school program, and that's happening right now at school. We have 60-plus students that get help with homework with Madison teachers and experience a structured environment similar to summer school with many unique learning opportunities. I don't want to be the only one up here talking, so I have invited a couple people so that they could share a little bit about their experiences. I've asked Mrs. Devers to come up, and Debbie Devers, she has 3 children at Madison, and the reason I picked her is because her 3 children are involved in all 4 components that I just talked about at Madison. So I just wanted her to give you a little update of what her experience is with Madison.
Hi, bear with me because I'm going to be nervous. I'm very happy with Madison and the programs that they have offered for my children. They have attended my 10-year-old, she has attended since kindergarten. And it has benefited since they had those after-school programs, and then they started the summer program, and then the Wraparound, which is the new one. Mm-hmm. And then they did the pre-kindergarten jump, and then I had my youngest, my son, and I didn't want him to not be in it because I wanted him to be around other kids and experience the whole school thing like what he was explaining. And it made him more responsible, better interaction with other kids, and better authority. So it's not just the parents being the ones with the authority. There's other people that have to have the authority over him. So it helped him out, and it helped him grow. And he's the biggest kid, the tallest kid out of the whole kindergarten. So they kind of look up to him as a big brother. And it's really good for him, and it makes him proud. But this whole programs that they offer is just wonderful. I mean, it's helped me through my medical conditions to help me get myself right and do what I have to do to care for myself so I can take care of my children.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to introduce Barb Ellingsworth. She is a kindergarten teacher, and she's just going to speak real quickly regarding the Kinder Jump program.
Our Kinder Jump program is very beneficial for our kids because we're able to work on and get a head start on academic standards for not only reading but math. And those things can help those kids grow in their confidence and their learning. We're also able to practice procedures for the classroom and for the building, which creates a lot of classroom leaders, which is good for us and for those kids because then other kids can kind of look up to them. The last thing is that this experience also helps eases kids' fears, and it helps build a friendship, so it makes them feel better on those first few days of school. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. And next I have Adrian and Isabella Jones, and they're going to talk a little bit about their Stepping Stones experience. You guys want to come up? You go first. Introduce yourself.
My name is Adrian Jones, and I'm from Madison Elementary. And we were in the summer program for Madison. And so it was fun. We went on a lot of field trips, and we made new friends, and we talked and stuff. And on Wednesdays, we would go and we would have these stations at St. John's, and at the night we would go to this Hy-Vee in the St. John's, and we would make some snacks and stuff, and then we would eat them, and then we would have a big feast at night.
Good job. That's very good. Good job. Thank you, Adrian. All right, Isabella, introduce yourself.
My name is Isabella Jones, and in summer school, we had lots of fun because when we would go on the field trips, we'd learn new stuff, and we'd like take that new stuff and bring it back to St. John's and learn about it. And then on Wednesdays when we'd be in there, we'd be in new stations, and we'd go to the craft room and stuff.
Thank you, guys. And now to end this, I do want to thank you all for your time, and I do have the Deaver children, Anastasia, Tatiana, and TJ, along with Kelly Dugan, who is my partner in crime for the Stepping Stones after school program. We have a little craft thing that we do on Tuesdays and Thursdays with the kids. And they did make a small craft they want to give to all of you to show you a little bit of our appreciation. And thank you very much for your time.
And in addition to the crafts, I also have the kids are going to hand you some information about 21st century, not just in Davenport, but across the state of Iowa. So when you're out and about and you're talking to other school board members around the state who don't have after-school programming and summer programming, it'll give you some talking points about how to engage them, because these are such essential programs. So I have some infographics that you can take with you, and if you have any questions about those, you don't have to ask me tonight. You can get a hold of me and I can talk to you about the program. All right. So I'll let these guys hand out their your gifts, and then we can entertain questions.
And what are your names?
They're not going to ask me.
Anastasia? Cassiana? Cassiana. Thank you. Are you Dugan then? I'm Dugan. You're Dugan. Who's Kelly? I'm Kelly. You're Kelly. What's your name? Huh? Isabella? Okay, I missed that. And you're Adrian. Okay, thank you.
If we're stuck, just give it to somebody sitting next to each other. Let them fight over it.
Okay, so don't go too far, because they might have some questions for you. Okay, hold on. Stay right here, you guys. You want to? Okay, you guys. They want you to introduce yourselves again. Okay. All right. Ready? You go first. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. My name
Yep. Say your name. And
Isabella.
and grade. What grade?
My name is third grade.
Yeah, speak right. There you go.
Third grade, and my name is Isabella.
There you go.
Fifth grade, and my name is Adrian Jones.
Anastasia, and I'm fourth grade. Tatiana Devers, third grade.
Here's the biggest kid in the whole kindergarten class, right?
TJ in kindergarten.
Do you guys have any questions for us?
Well, we'll find out real quick. Any questions or comments from the board? Director Beck.
First of all, I want to say thank you guys for the rocks. These are awesome. It makes me very happy. And thank you for presenting to us. That's really cool that you guys got to stand up here and talk to all the grown-ups. We really appreciate it. And thank you to Madison for putting on these programs. So can you tell me a little bit about how you came up with the idea to incorporate Stepping Stones, which I'm assuming was already its own entity running after school programs, and then managed to get everybody on board to do summer programming? It seems like something that would be great at a lot of our schools.
Yeah, I can tell you when this summer we always had kind of a wraparound program in the summer, but that was going to be dissolved, and so I was talking to a lot of parents about what was going to happen with the students from 12 to 5, because we don't ever want our programming to get in the way of them living their lives, holding positions, and so we worked with a partner, and they agreed to take on the wraparound program, which really helped out a bunch of our parents, 35 of them actually, who might not have been able to carry on with their job if we didn't provide that. So that's a great question. Yeah, go ahead.
Chelsea Robinson is now an ESL teacher, but was a 4th grade teacher last year. She created a PowerPoint of our summer school in action, took pictures while we were on field trips and did things, and then she shared it, and we all share it at the end of the school year now to our kids to try to recruit them and show them what we do so that they don't think they're just coming back and doing the same thing they did this school year. They're kind of burned out on at that point. Also, Bob calls parents nonstop at the end of the school year. The first day of summer school, the first week, if the kids signed up and they didn't show up, he calls. He says, is transportation a problem? We have the after-school program. He does a lot to recruit our families to get 65 families there.
And I will say, having 91% attendance in the summertime is pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Director DeSalvo.
Well, I would just like to thank you all too. I love my rock. I will keep it with me. It's very nice. Which one of you painted this one? Any of you painted this one? Anybody? Well, it's beautiful. I'm so glad to hear that you're doing these programs, especially over the summertime. That means an awful lot. It sounds like you're having a really good time, but learning a lot of things too. So keep going to those programs. It sounds like they're an awful lot of fun. And thanks to the staff at Madison for making it happen. Really, really making a difference. So thank you.
Anybody else? Director Gosa.
Thank you for my rock. It's very colorful. And thanks for giving Mary one, because Mary rocks too. So we do appreciate that. And thank you guys. You guys spoke very well coming up here and giving us our stuff, so great job on that. I know it could be a little bit intimidating seeing everybody up here, but you guys did a great job. Thank you, and thank you to the staff. Keep up the great work. Thank you.
Anybody else? Director Mayfield.
I think it's just great what you're doing, staff as well as kids. One of the great things about doing things during the summer, they can be more fun than they can be work. But during that fun, you're getting exposed to so many different things. And so you're learning. And it's great that you have this opportunity, that we have the staff and we have the people that are presenting it to you and giving you exposure to so many things that you probably wouldn't ordinarily see. It's amazing the things that our kids in some of our neighborhoods never see. Many times when I was working with kids in the neighborhood, many of them had never been to Illinois. You'd probably think that's about 3 states away. But it's not, because many of us never leave our neighborhoods. And I think that's what you're doing. You're giving these kids so much exposure and opportunity to see things they don't ordinarily see. So to the staff of Madison, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Well, if not, I want to thank everybody. Oh, excuse me. Who's got something?
Kelly's got one. Oh, can I
Oh,
just say
Kelly,
one
go
more
ahead.
thing? I was thinking about it while I was listening to your comments. We teach about 8 weeks in the summer. We had so many teachers last year that wanted to do it that we had to divide it. And we got, like for myself, I got to work 4 weeks and somebody else got to work 4 weeks because we had so many staff that wanted to be with the kids in the summer and teach in the summer that nobody could do the full 8 weeks. We had to divide it up because we had so many people there. Just wanted to say that.
And I will say, I think that's why our program is so successful, not only in the summertime, but in our after-school program. Our staff is there, and then we have such a great AmeriCorps staff. We have, you know, young kids coming, and I whenever I can talk to them, I try to push them into the teaching profession because they are amazing with our kids, and I think it's a great proving ground for them to then go on to be educators. So, and I think that's what makes our program very successful.
Okay, thank you. Before we go on, student board members, anything? Go ahead, Madison. I know your mouth's full, but you got something to say.
She must really like the rock.
Yeah, I feel like I should make a pun because it says Madison Rocks and my name's Madison. But yeah, you guys are all really great, and I love when we have showcases come because I love to see the good things that our schools are doing. So thank you very much.
Great. Anything else from student board members? Okay. Then I just want to say, and there were so many people here, but I especially wanted to recognize you students. Adrian, right? Isabella? Is it DJ? TJ. Okay. Anastasia? And Tatiana. Is that correct? We're close. Okay, thank you guys. You guys are just absolutely amazing. You really are. And you make all of us in this room proud. We're all about all of you students, but we do appreciate everything that our administrators and Steve and Bob and Kelly, and I also got a Barb in here somewhere. Is that? Okay, thank you. And I forgot your name earlier, and I apologize for that, but thank you guys, every one of you, for everything you're doing. Great program. Thanks. Oh, just met Director Mayfield has something.
I noticed on this explanation of 21st century centers that it mentions here parent engagement and literacy services, educational services for the families of participating students. What I'm interested in is what is the component for the parents? What part do they play? Is it a program? I mean, obviously that if we didn't have the parents, they probably wouldn't have the children, and we wouldn't have anything. But what role do they play as a part of the program?
I would not say that they're directly part of the program. I would say it's a service that we provide.
For the parent.
For the parent,
Okay.
right.
All right.
And to know that they're not just in daycare, but they're in a quality program that has all the components of it.
Well, the reason I said that is because it says something about literacy. And to me, the first thing I thought was maybe you have a literacy program that you're working with the kids, or maybe, or not the kids, the parents, or something of that nature, or maybe the parents are being taught how to work with their kids. That's why I asked about that in particular.
And Mr. Mayfield, the information I gave you is all the different programs in Iowa. We're just really kind of just talking about our program, but
all right.
Some of these other programs that receive 21st century monies, they could have that as a component.
That component. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Exciting anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Madison rocks. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to student board reports. Superintendent Tate.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you taking time to be here with us. So, Madison, let's start with you and go down the line with your reports.
Yes.
Hello. All right, there we go. Well, to start off our school board report tonight, West had 6 C-Style Honor Orchestra nominees, one of them being our own Madison Cousins, so we're very proud of that. We also had Turner Sperry, Morgan Schaefer, Tristan Farmer, Bailey Jones, and Madison Burnham, and we just would like to say congratulations to all of them.
So our FTC robotics programs are having a fundraiser at the Chick-fil-A on 53rd Street tomorrow night. And you mentioned West, and part of the proceeds goes towards sponsoring FLL programs in Kenya. So we're very proud of them. The boys swimming season is coming to a close. Senior night was Thursday, and the last dual meet is tomorrow against Bettendorf. We're very proud of how hard they've worked and how well they're going to do coming to the end of their season.
And then at the public forum over the weekend, which I believe was last Saturday, if I recall correctly. Last Saturday, yep. West students and staff, as well as students and staff from some of the other Davenport community schools, such as Central and North, were able to interact with their legislators and advocate for important issues, including funding inequality with the Worth Less campaign.
And we had 3 students selected for SEBA Honor Band and 1 selected for SEBA Jazz Band. And State Jazz Band Contest is this Saturday at Assumption, and good luck to both of West Jazz Bands, which will be competing.
Our annual gala dance is also this weekend, which is the same day as State Jazz, so hopefully some of those people can get over there in time. Turnout is expected to be high as usual, and our school is very excited to finally know who our gala king will be.
And finally, our varsity basketball team is currently 10-3, and we defeated Central DeWitt at our home game last Friday, so we're very proud of our team. And that is the student board report for West.
All right, so North's report won't quite be as elaborate as theirs. For basketball, I guess I don't know what the girls' score was, but I know the boys' team last Friday did beat Burlington 74-41. That's pretty good. And then tomorrow night, the boys and girls teams will play Davenport Central. I know we lost to West, but hopefully we can at least get Central, so we're not last in city. That's always the goal, beat someone. That's the cross-country goal anyways. This Saturday will be the state competition for Science Bowl. Last year, North's team placed 6th in the state. This year, we're expecting to do better. We did play last year's team, which had Anthony DeSavo on it. And we did beat them in practice games. So things are looking pretty promising for that.
North's Winter Dance is coming up soon as well on February 10th. So we're looking forward to that. That's all we got.
Thank you. Always very interesting. And North, you can kind of bring some more next time. We'll have a little competition here to see how it goes. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to staff report. Superintendent Tate.
At a committee of the whole meeting, we discussed minority recruiting, and we talked about our hiring process for the district and that we had a standard procedure for doing that. And tonight we wanted to go in a little bit more detail and provide some information. And so, Dr. Goldstone, are you going to come up?
Thank you very much. That's a very, very hard act to follow. That was really enjoyable to watch, to hear the students from Madison. We had an opportunity at a COW meeting to very briefly talk about our hiring procedures here in the district. The sheet that is currently up is a very quick process review of what is expected. Part of that process review is we are asking those that will be interviewing candidates to begin by reviewing that. It's a shortened edition, and to be sure that you are following the guidelines. Part of what the HR department does, once a year we will visit with building principals who are our primary hires, but we'll also try to get to operations and other groups as well to make sure that they too are following these guidelines. We are interviewing external as well as internal candidates. Each of those groups are going to apply on Apple Track, which is hooked to Teach Iowa, which is run by the state of Iowa. So what you have before you, and I'll go very, very quickly through these, And we'll also throw up some samples of what we might be talking about. Any candidate that is interested in any position in this district has to apply on AppleTrack. We do no paper applications. So we will put a vacancy notice. We will say what that vacancy notice is, if there are any particular requirements with that. Then any potential candidate would go on AppleTrack, complete that application, upload documents such as references, etc. Then let's now just kind of look at teachers, but all will follow. But I'll use teachers as an example. The building principal will then pull together a group of people. Those people will review all the applications. So let's say there is a 5th grade opening. They will go in, they will review the applications. They will use the rubric that is designed to go along with that. And the application tool will list your particular criterias, such as certification in 5th grade, if you wanted someone with previous experience, whatever those particular pieces might be, you would utilize and create your application screening tool and use that against all the applications that you have accumulated. Then you will decide to put people on your interview team. By contract for teachers, you must have a DEA member and then other members as well. Sometimes there may be a community member. Sometimes HR reps will be involved, but primarily it is going to consist of people within that building. Prior to the interview, you are going to develop the questions that are going to be asked. What we remind all interviewers is you use the questions devised. It does not mean candidate A, I asked this, candidate B, I asked this, candidate C. Everybody is asked the same questions. The principal typically is the one that will develop the questions. We are here to assist with any questions that people may want in order to create those. From that, now you're going to the interview. So those candidates selected will be contacted. A time for interview will be set, and the committee that is going to do the interviewing will be there as well. If something happens and one of the interview committee members is not able to participate in all the interviews, they can't come back at the end. It will only be those people that have gone through the interviews for everyone will actually have a voice at the end in terms of processing through of who the successful candidate will be. The questions are asked. If there is an answer that causes one to have a follow-up question, that is allowed. But again, when it's all said and done, every candidate is evaluated on the same criteria, the same questions, and what those particular answers were. The selection of the best candidate is a conversation of committee members using a document of strengths and identifying the strengths of all of the candidates and whatever gaps that particular candidate may have. The whole process is to be a very organized, thoughtful, and objective process. It's not about I like this person, I don't like that, but why? What is it that the criteria that has been built that you feel this person has some gaps in the criteria that you have set? Once the candidate is selected as the best candidate, then there are some documents and other procedures that need to be done. The candidate has to provide the name and contact information of 3 references. The building principal typically then will contact those references, ask the same question of each of those references, complete a reference document that must be attached to the completion of the recommendation for hire that is submitted to the HR office. Throughout this process, we are asking that people seriously look at, consider, interview, and have people of color participating in that process. And so we do stress that throughout this process, that we are indeed able to have a diverse selection of candidates as we are choosing the best candidate for that particular position. Recommendation for hire is submitted to the HR office. In our office, then, we review all of the necessary documents here. Part of that documentation, you are identifying who else has been interviewed for that position, as well as their race. And so we do know that you did not just interview one person and select, but there have been at least 3 candidates. In some limited situations where it is so difficult to fill a position, such as family and consumer science, you may not have all of the candidates that we would like, but we don't have a lot of candidates available for that position. But for most positions, we expect a minimum of 3 people to be interviewed. And as I have seen, that interview list is typically much more than 3 people. Our HR office then will, number 1, check to make sure all of the paperwork is completed accurately. And then through our office, a background check is then executed. Our office, or I am the one that will call the successful candidate and offer them the position, providing their background check has come back clean and they have not said, I've had no arrest, and then we run the background check and we find that they do. In that particular case, that candidate is notified and told, we're sorry, but you signed saying all of the information was accurate and your background check came that you have had some arrest in your background within the last 7 years. If a candidate says, wait a minute, I don't think that's me, I have nothing, then we will get additional information. And there are some instances where you have 2 names and it has, for whatever reason, come back incorrect. So we double check Social Security numbers, birth dates, those kinds of things. So every principal will get this when we review it. Every principal, as well as anyone else hiring in the district, is expected to follow these guidelines. Once the interview process is over, principals and others are reminded you need to hold on to these documents for at least 3 years. In case there is any question asked, we will have all the documents, including that selection process, the interview process, who was on the interview team, what were the questions asked. All those components need to remain together in case there is any questions asked up to 3 years after the actual interview. Questions?
So before we get into questions, this is a staff report. It's not a discussion item exactly, so I want to be careful. But if there are questions for clarification or something like that, go ahead. I think Director DeSalvo.
So in the event that a background check comes back negative, I guess is the right word, do you re-interview for the position again, or do you have a candidate 1 and then 2 and then 3, or?
It would go back to the principal and the committee. Typically, it will go to candidate number 2. Okay. But if 1 and 2 are kind of far apart, they may decide, let's go back and let's start it again. So we just notify this candidate cannot be hired, and then it would be their decision, the direction they would want to go.
Okay. I have one more question. And I think you may have said it early on, and I didn't note it, but is there like a rubric or something, a grading per se of each candidate? Is that how you?
Yes, you set it down with the criteria, and then each of the candidates' application is reviewed by the rubric that has been decided, such as if you want someone with experience or you want someone with technology, whatever those pieces are, you would build it into the rubric, and as a group, and it's not the same group that's interviewing. I think I neglected to say that. It would be another group that would be reviewing the applications. They would use pre-slugged, what are the qualifications or experiences or requirements you're looking for, that as the group would go through, they would check whether or not you had it or you did not have it.
So that's to get them the interview, and then upon the interview is the same type of rubric.
Yes.
For questions asked.
And it is based on strengths and gaps, but it's the same kind of a thing. You are looking at what is a rubric that we are wanting in that particular candidate, which of the candidates has the most or the best suited in terms of the criteria that has been established for that position.
Okay. I'm sorry, one more. I don't want to hang on. And this is for teaching. Is it for paraeducators, coaches?
It's for everybody.
Everybody.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything
One
else?
clarification, the only difference would be is a teacher would be licensed, and so we're looking for that where the other positions would not necessarily be that.
Okay, Director Hayes.
You named off quite a number of steps. Is there like an average time frame that it would take for this from interview or from application to hire?
It depends on how quickly you go through it, because you're going to have one group that's going through the application. Once that process is done, and the principal is typically involved with that, since I'm staying with principals. If it was someone else, it would be even a para. It would likely be the principal that's doing it. Then as a principal is doing that, he probably is identifying the people that he wants on his committee, and then the interviews begin afterwards. So it could go over a week span. Say you start on Monday and you're ready to interview on Wednesday, and recommendation turned into our office on Friday, and we likely would be trumped depending on the time, because now we got to do a background check. So we would not be contacting candidates until the following week.
Okay, so
others go a little slower. So within a 2 week from the time that that process begins until that candidate would be the outside, would be 2 weeks in almost all cases.
Okay, not months, so.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Director Beck.
How long, how long do positions have to be posted before you start reviewing applications?
Contract says, I believe, 5 days. If you don't get a good application pool, or the pool you have doesn't have many of the characteristics or criteria you're asking, you can leave it longer than that. But by contract, that's the shortest amount of time we can put it up.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Director Mayfield.
Ooh. Off the top of my head, I would say probably 5 years or more. Yeah, Director Miller, who was the previous HR director, is the one that created these documents. About the only thing that has really changed, way back in the day when I was a building principal, we used to have paper. And so you had filing cabinets, and Director Potts can remember, you'd have filing cabinets filled with paper applications, and you had to go through the paper applications and you wrote down the names. And this makes it so much easier to have it on internet. but formalizing this to make sure everybody in the district is following this has been in place probably 5 years under her tutelage.
Now, I mean, 10 years, 20 years ago, I was asking the same question, who hires? And the answer that I got back then was that the principal is who makes the final decision. Is that correct, or the interview
I can tell you from my years of being in the district, the principal is the one who submits the name to Human Resources. It is Human Resources who calls and offers a position. Principals are not to do that.
Maybe I'm not being clear.
Okay.
Because that's part of the process. I'm not talking about process. I'm talking about who actually does the hiring. And I was told by some higher-ups that the principal has the final say in who's hired. And I have many examples of people that I know that submitted to be hired, and they were not hired, even though we had great need of their type of person and the relationships that they build. But what I was told was the principal has the last say-so. So what I'm asking is, through all this that I'm hearing now about the rubric and the people that are doing the interview, people instead of just one, is what I heard then was that the principal is the one that has the final say as to who's hired. What I'm hearing now is a consortium of people that do the interviewing and about the rubric that you're talking about, which I'm not disputing that there could have been a rubric for the last 50 years. But the person that actually says and determines that you're hired, I was told, was the principal, whether that person fits in to their program, whether that principal can work with that person. And that's what I was asking, how far back did that change? I don't know if that's something you can answer.
The only answer I can offer is throughout my tenure in the district as a building principal, building principals submitted a recommendation for hire to the Human Resources Department. The Human Resources Department is the one that actually contacted the candidate and offered the position. So I think we're talking the same thing. The principal is the one who is saying, this is who I want.
Yes.
But the principal does not call that person and say, I'm offering this job to you. It is Human Resources that does that.
Now I understand, but that's the part I want to get clear, that the principal is making the call, the principal is deciding through a consortium of information,
yes,
whether they call someone else and get their opinion or not. It is the principal that's making that final decision who calls Human Services and actually says, hire this person. If the principal does not recommend them, I assume they don't get hired.
We would know of no candidate unless we have a recommendation for hire. Part of the reason principals are told you cannot offer a position is we have to run a background check.
Sure.
And so we don't want positions offered and then we find out this is not a candidate that we can hire. So once we know all of that is completed, for teachers, I call and offer every position in this district based on the recommendation that the principal has submitted.
Well, and I think the process is good, but I wouldn't say perfect, because there's some personal aspects that have to be considered, and maybe that's the principal should make that decision. But many times, if we don't have our body of people that are working, whether that be teachers or people in the cafeteria or whatever area, then that basically is a decision that the principal makes as who's the best suited for that job.
No, because
Well,
there
if
is
they
a
qualify.
committee of people. I mean, you've gone through that process. You've interviewed. At the end of all of the interviews, that's when you go back through your candidates. You look at their strengths, you look at their gaps based on the rubric that you've determined up front. These are the things we are looking for. And from that group, a consensus is built, and the principal then does the background check, references, and then completes the recommendation for hire for HR. So it is not just the principal by himself or herself. It is supposed to be a committee. By contract for a teacher, you have to have a DEA member. And usually this committee are building people, DEA plus others. So if you were looking for a fifth grade teacher, the other fifth grade teacher is likely to be one of the persons that is on this interview committee. If you have a SAM, the SAM is likely. So I think you're thinking it is just this one person who does it all. No, it is not. And according to our guidelines, it cannot ever be just the principal. It has to be a committee that's involved.
But
I
let me
don't
just,
think.
because I hope to answer your question. I think I know where you're going.
Well, she said something that I thought, and I want to clear that.
Okay, but let me say this one thing. If the principal disagrees with the consensus of the group, he or she must put that in writing. So, in fact, she's right. There is a consensus, but you're right also. The final say is the principal, and he or she can say, I'm going with the consensus of the group. If he or she says, no, I'm not, it must be justified in writing.
And my reason for asking it, because Dr. Tate, you told me it was the principal's decision. Because I've spoke to you about many people that were hired or not hired, that have worked in the system, came back as administrators, and we talked about that. And so that's why I'm asking you these questions, is because I'm sort of hearing, if you're not clear, then you don't know that the principal is the one that made that decision, regardless of them sending it to your office for approval. That's after it's been decided. There may still be something blocking them then. They may not be able to qualify in other areas. But the principal is what I was going to say that I was told. I've been told
and these
that a long
documents
time.
are all done under the principal's guidance.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, what concerns me even with that, and that person has to work with whoever's being hired, that candidate, is that it's basically, regardless of who the interviewees are, it's usually the leader that gets what they want most of the time. And it concerns me when I see that we have a very unbalanced staff when it comes to working hard to get minorities, and then I see some minorities that turned down with excellent qualifications, some that even worked in the school system but not be able to move. So that concerns me when one person's opinion is the deciding factor, regardless of what the qualifications are. And someone has to decide. And so I understand that has happened, but again, it concerns me that the situation we put ourselves in when some people are not hired, and that's up to that one person whether they like or dislike something. So thank you.
Director Gosa.
I just had a question to clarify that process because I got lost. So you have your committee, okay, and if the principal doesn't go with what the committee recommends and they have to, in writing, put the reasons why, does that come back to the committee and they talk about it, or who does that go to justify that that is correct justification for that person not to
That
be?
would come to the HR office, and if there were concerns about what is written, and I don't know of too many instances that happens,
Okay.
but that's always an option. There would be a discussion with the associate superintendent who has the direct supervision over that building. But that would be a very rare occasion. But, I mean, that's always a possibility, however.
Okay. Can I ask one more?
When last showed?
Hold on.
Please,
Dr. Gosa just asked.
All right.
That's okay.
Let me try
But
to
I was-
maintain control.
Don't be in control. I was looking that way, so I didn't see him say
Um,
anything.
and you said you do background checks and they go back 7 years? And then so something pops up, because I know I run into this when I run background checks on my coaches and stuff like that, because you have people with the same names and stuff. And then if that something pops up, you reach out to them and say, hey, this showed up.
Mhm.
And they're like, whoa, that wasn't me. And then you go back in and have to do it again. Okay.
Mhm.
And then so you do the background checks. Do they also do their fingerprints and everything else too? Or?
Yeah, you have to do that for the state. And so many, again, talking teachers, they have gotten that done and have gotten those into the state. Others, we will tell you where you need to go in order to get that done.
Okay.
But it's the two things that have to be done, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Mayfield.
We have a background check, and we are looking for felony arrest. On the application, it says, be sure that you are truthful, and because you may have a felony arrest, that does not automatically disqualify you for employment. As you are signing, it says you are signing that you have been truthful, and failure to be truthful could disqualify you. It does. If we find, and you have to say could, because we do a different check. We go back again if you say, wait a minute, that really isn't me. I've not had any. And so, yes, you are going to be disqualified. We're not looking for disqualifiers. We have to follow what is expected in terms of backgrounds of individuals. And again, because you have a felony conviction, that conviction in and of itself does not say you cannot be employed. But what happens too often, people don't put it down. Then you run the check and it pops up. Now you have disqualified yourself. You're welcome.
Director Gosa.
Just one last question, and I'm sure I know the answer to this, but for the background check, okay, it's 7 years or 18 years old if it's like a kid fresh out of that. I just wanted to verify that just to make sure. All right, thank you.
Director Mayfield.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I think there was a situation that I know of that a kid went to college, and within the first 2 or 3 months he was there, he had a DWI. He became a very outstanding, first he graduated from college, very outstanding in a sport that he was in. Never had any other blemishes on his record. He was 29 years old, known nationally for what he had achieved. He applied for a job in the Davenport School District. Because he didn't mention that DWI when he was 19 years old, just starting into college, which whether he didn't remember or not, meaning from my perspective that he said he didn't remember, but he was disqualified. And his record was impeccable from the time he had that incident when he was 19 till he applied for a job in the district, and he was almost 30 years old, and he was disqualified. So that's why I was asking all those questions about the 7 years, and I understand if you feel that person repeatedly has got felonies or have done things to break the law, and he doesn't mention them. But I am thinking it's possible for a young man that did something when he was a freshman in college not to recognized that that in itself was, and I don't even know it was a felony, so I'm saying it was, but I don't know. I don't even know if a DWI is a felony. That's something else somebody would have to look at. But my concern was, outstanding as he had been for practically 10 years, he was denied a job in the Davenport school system, in the school that he would have done a lot of good, and all of the kids and the family and the community knew of his achievements and how upstanding and outstanding a young man he was. But he was denied a job. Now, here's what makes it even, to me, I don't quite understand it. Because that young man went to work for another company, a fitness company. Do you know that gentleman was allowed to come into the schools and work with the kids as long as he was working for another company? But he couldn't be employed by the school system. That, to me, is very ironic, that they allowed something like that to happen and did not give that young man a fair shot of working for the school system for something that he did when he was 19. So that's why I asked you all those questions about the 7 years and how it's actually initiated and how we deal with it. Because I've actually seen those incidents happen within our school district. And I always go to the top. I always go to Dr. Tate or one of the administrators up above, and I ask, is this the way we work? And so knowing that you deal with this is why I was asking you all those questions. So thank you.
Any other clarifications that are needed by the board? Before we move on, I want to point out that this is really a relatively new portion of the meeting called staff report. And the intent is that there would be a staff report. There may be clarifications. I want to point out also that the board has opportunities to request, and all of you have a board request for information or future agenda items. The presentation, the staff report that was made tonight was about 10 minutes long, and the clarifications were about 23 minutes long. And if the board, in fact, I suspect this will be a debate at the agenda committee, if the board doesn't want staff reports, we can move away from that and put some of these things more into discussion items. But tonight's issue that was presented by Dr. Goldstone and then clarified by the board was probably longer than an average discussion item. So I just want the board to recognize that and to think about, should we ask for an agenda item? If there's something, if we believe that we need to change the policies or the rules, we can do all that, but that would be more in a discussion item or somehow talking about things rather than just a report by the staff. I just want to point that out. So we'll move on.
Thank you.
Anya?
I'm not sure exactly. What do you want to comment on? This was a report. It was a staff report.
Well, you haven't heard what I want to comment.
I understand. It's been 35 minutes now.
Won't take but 30 seconds.
Won't take but what? 15 seconds. Go for it.
First of all, it opens up questions by board members when you asked if there's any questions.
I didn't ask if there were any questions. I asked if there were any questions for clarifications.
Well,
and that was very precise, and that is not what happened. I don't want to get into a debate on procedure right here. This is not the appropriate.
To each other and
excuse
at least
me?
Let me finish what I was saying.
In 15 seconds, you already took 15 seconds. I'll give you 3 more minutes, all right?
Well, I appreciate that. I'm saying I believe I was asked, as the board members were, if they had any questions, and that's what board members did. They asked questions to clarify what was going on. That's it.
I won't debate. I disagree respectfully and strongly with what you just said.
Thank you.
We will continue with the board meeting. Are there any board reports? Director DeSalvo.
This Saturday, as the student board members mentioned, there was the legislative forum at St. Ambrose. Thanks to Director Potts, Director Johansson, and myself, we attended. I think we have some work to do to try and prepare. Madison and I are kind of working on some plotting for the next one. I would invite everybody to attend the next forum. It is February 10th at St. Ambrose. From 10 to 10:30 is kind of a social interaction time, and then at 10:30 to noon, our legislators are there. Robbie Smith has told us he will not be able to attend that meeting. He's got a previous engagement that he had promised to well over a year ago, so we know he won't be there. We're also working on the bus trip, taking students to the Capitol on February 19th. That's a legislative advocacy committee is working on that. We have secured lunches. UEN has promised they will pay for that again. And I have a couple calls into the governor's office. I'm hopeful that we will get some of her time and perhaps Lieutenant Governor Gregg's time as well. So I think that's it for now. Oh, one other thing, Ralph. I went to a presentation at North for their show choir, which was really good, but the big dance is this weekend. It's kind of a big deal for North, and I'm guessing West will be there and Central as well, I hope. It's a really big show choir presentation, a really great event. Go out there if you have the chance, because it'll be crazy, and you'll see tons and tons of students and kids from all over the state competing, and it's a really, really good event.
Event that you were talking about? Oh, I believe the big dance is North competition. I don't think West does the big dance. I'm not sure if we are or not. I know Central will be there for sure, but I'm not sure about West. I just wanted to add that in there.
Okay. And Director Hayes.
On January 10th, Dr. Tate and I went to City Council meeting, and the city recognized our efforts as far as the funding goes, and they provided a resolution to us, and it basically says the City of Davenport, whereas the City of Davenport, Iowa understands the important role schools and students play in our community and the benefits of investing in education, and whereas the City of Davenport, Iowa recognizes and supports the efforts to amend the Iowa per pupil funding formula, and whereas the district should be allowed to spend the same per pupil amount and should have adequate funding so as to allow that every district within the state to remain competitive and provide a world-leading education. And whereas the long-term health and growth of the state of Iowa is dependent upon people wanting to live, work, and play here, and whereas the spending power of districts has been eroding and requires amendment to the funding formula to allow for equal and adequate funding, and whereas it is time to reinvest in the long-standing promise of Iowa to provide the best public education in the world to its youth, and whereas this is the critical time for investors to see states and municipalities using funds advantageously to allow for communities to flourish as we transition into the knowledge economy. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that we, Frank Clips, Mayor of the City of Davenport, Iowa, and the City of Davenport supports the efforts to equally and adequately fund the Davenport School District and all of Iowa districts, that the General Assembly is encouraged to adopt the amendments of the Iowa Code to eliminate the current disparity of per pupil funding between Iowa's children, and that Iowa lead the way in educating youth. And it's signed by the mayor and the deputy city clerk.
Great, thank you very much. Any other board reports? All right, we'll move on to open forum. And we have several reports or several open forum requests. I just want to apologize again profusely to everybody that needs to come up here, and we will reconsider our order of procedure in the future. But right now we have Dirk Hillard, Ella Griesenbeck, Carrie Dugan, Megan Long, Carrie Keaton, Kelly Reinhardt. So you'll come in that order, and let me also say that the open forum is a time for members of the community to give input at a board meeting regarding school district issues or concerns. Individuals who want to speak should fill out an open forum request and give it to the board secretary prior to open forum. The board will not act on any issue presented during open forum if it was not published as an agenda item. The Iowa Open Meetings Law prohibits action on any issue that is not on the agenda. The president will set the amount of time allowed for individuals to speak during open forum. The board asks that no charges or complaints be made against individual employees of the district or community during open forum. Remarks that reflect negatively on the character or motives of any person will be called out of order. And we'll start with, everybody will be entitled to 2 minutes. And please, again, give your name and address, and then go ahead and tell us what's on your mind. First is Dirk Hillard.
Hello, my name is Dirk Hillard. My address is 6514 Hoover Road in Davenport, Iowa. Really, my major concern is for the children throughout the district. I'm a big advocate for children's education. I have 2 deaf children myself. They attend school here, and I've been finding there's lots of disparities with the language acquisition. And summer school was also cut to part-time. Like, I moved my oldest daughter to full-time, but my son is at part-time. They're both deaf students. I would like him to go through the summer and come back in the fall, and that got all messed up. And my daughter was having a hard time with socialization, felt very isolated. We recently made the decision to go to Iowa School for the Deaf for her education. And just her mood, her socialization, everything has improved just in that short amount of time. Language is such a big deal for these children. Isolation needs to be improved. So I really think that full-time summer school for deaf children is a major thing, and special needs children as well. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much, Dirk. And what's your name that helped us with the interpretation?
Sarah Deepover.
Sarah Epover?
Deepover.
Deepover.
D-E-P-O-V-E-R.
Thank you very much for helping us out. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to Ella Griesenbeck, excuse me.
Hello, I'm Ella Griesenbeck. I'm a sophomore over at Central High School.
Excuse me, Ella, we need your address too.
630 East Colorado Street, Davenport, Iowa, 52803.
Thank you.
I was in the special education department for a few years, and we had a fight to get into it. It was quite difficult, actually. The many times we tried to request testing, we were denied many times until we went up to Iowa City ourselves and got tested. After that, the special education department still wouldn't receive our request to do testing. It still took about a year after my mom pulled me into homeschooling till we got back in, and we were finally settled on a 504. And that didn't stick. Finally, we got into special education, and some of people had problems with the accommodations I needed, and we got to about last year when I tested out, and so now I'm on a 504, doing better. But the special ed department could have helped me a lot more and refused too many times.
Is that it? Okay, thank you very much, Ella. Next is Carrie Dugan.
Good evening. I'm Carrie Dugan. I live at 630 East Colorado Street in Davenport. I'm Ella's mom. Last Wednesday, January 17th, we were able to hear Director of Special Education's perspective on how special education runs in this school. I am here this evening to tell you that that perspective is nothing like the reality that exists in this school. In truth, the special education department oppresses the educational rights of students by blatant disregard for special education law. The administration does nothing to assist us or to right these wrongs. The administrators at the school level, as well as the counselors, are complicit in these abuses through lack of awareness of policy and procedure. It is our hope as district parents that our concerns are heard and met, and they need to be heard for longer than 2 minutes and longer than it takes for you people to bicker. To this end, the Director of Special Education must be held to full account for any gaps in the education of all qualifying children. The administration must investigate, refine the suspect process so that parents are aware of the actions they need to take to access services. The time is now. The responsibility is yours.
Thank you, Carrie. Next is Megan Long. Excuse me? All right, go ahead.
I'm not sure if I have enough copies. I wasn't sure who all would be sitting up here, but I appreciate everyone reading them. Consider it my class project.
Do you have a spare to give to our secretary? Oh, okay. All right, great. Okay, thank you very much, Carrie. Megan?
Okay. My name is Megan Long. My address is 1943 West 56th Court, Davenport, Iowa. I talked to most of you in 2006 regarding my concerns with special education, and they have not changed. Last Wednesday, it was announced that the state of Iowa is coming to review special education department due to a complaint filed to the state. I want to reinforce my concerns with special education administration. First of all, there was an attempt to form a special education board that met quarterly. There were only 3 parents present at this, as that was all that was asked from my understanding. I did suggest other parents coming and was informed that it was limited to a certain number of people. The agenda at every meeting was already predetermined. If there was a concern, it was to be brought up at the next meeting, and it never was. I was insulted that it was stated that parents do not show up or show concerns regarding our children with special needs and the services provided to them. We all have concerns for our children. We are limited with advocacy as well. There is only one parent liaison for our entire district, and her main goal that I have seen is to write down facts from the meeting. I want to reinforce that when parents of children with special needs do have a concern, they are directed to the Special Education Administration. If they don't get resolution from that department, they are informed to contact administration from downtown. Administration from downtown then informs the parents that this is not their concern and sends them back to Special Education Administration. So basically, there is no resolution for parents, and we are stuck. Our special education staff at our schools continues to not have the support or training that is needed, and our children are placed into classrooms without proper support. I am curious why downtown special education staff continues to grow as well. How large is that department? What do they all do? How much money is spent down there instead of hiring more teachers or paras to work with our kids? How many grievances have been filed against this department? The last point I would like to make is our number for Davenport Community School District overall are decreasing. When parents ask where their child should go that have special needs, therapists and doctors from Iowa City and local are directing these parents away from our district, or our parents are deciding to homeschool these children. We need to make a change at the administration level And I hope that we can make that change together. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Next is Carrie Heaton.
Hello. My name is Carrie Heaton. I live at 1129 East 15th Street. I am here as a parent. I am here as PTA president of Washington Elementary. Most of my class fellow parents back there, we have heard through the rumor mills that Washington is a potential for shutting down. As a parent, that's very disturbing to me. I know that this is part of a 3-year plan, and we're coming up on the end of that 3-year plan. My daughter is first grade at Washington, and my son will start kindergarten there next year. If you would have asked me 3 years ago if I cared about that decision, the answer would have been no. But now that my kids are in that school, my answer is I absolutely care 100% about this school. My daughter, I just want to let you know, the diversity of the kids in her classroom is second to none. I grew up in a school, a town of 10,000, 20,000 people. There was like 2 or 3 black kids. Everybody was white. It was all us. Scarlett is being educated in a real world setting. She is getting an influence of parents of all walks of life. They brought home this pamphlet on the Martin Luther King Jr. and kind of telling his story. So we're reading through this and we get to the page that says, back when segregation was taking place, that black kids and white kids could not go to school together. And she looked at me and she's like, that is just so sad. And I said, Scarlett, do you even see your friends as color? She's like, no, I just see them and I love all of them. And I truly believe that the value of Washington is that. It's the diversity of the kids. It's our neighborhood school. It's the kids that they're going to grow up with, that they're going to go into Sudlow with, that they're going to go to Central with. And so I just really, really, really want you guys to take a look. I know the budget. I know there's dollars, but please, with your heart, if these were your kids and your decision is on the line to close our community school, I'm just begging you to please rethink that decision, because that school to me is invaluable. Those teachers are invaluable. He is going to be kindergarten next year. He already loves his 2 kindergarten teachers. Oh, I love you too, buddy. And I'm just asking you to please not look at it as a budget and a number, but to look at it as our community school, our neighborhood school, and just the togetherness of it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. Next is Kelly Reinhardt.
My name is Kelly Reinhardt. I live at 1446 West High Street in Davenport. I'm also here with concerns about the special education program in Davenport. My oldest son is a junior at West High School. Now he is doing amazing. When he was in junior high, we lost at least 1 full year of education for him with fighting over his services. We were being backed into a corner. We were being bullied by administration. I was told the state of Iowa does not have to follow the federal law when I pointed out that they were not following federal law. That was by Patty Pace Tracy. I was told my son could not have an evaluation by a school psychologist, that if we wanted one, we had to go pay for it ourselves outside of school. Too many things happened that I can't tell you all of them in 2 minutes. We had no less than 6 IEP meetings that year, and it wasn't until our doctor that we traveled to Maryland every other year to see offered to pay for her attorney to travel here and represent us before we were heard by anybody about the services he needed and were given those services. They kept trying to cut services and cut services and cut services. To a child who is in the life skills program, he's nonverbal. They were cutting his speech services down to 15 minutes a week. when every doctor he's ever seen was recommending no less than 3 20-minute sessions a week. They're billing Medicaid for what? To cut his services? I sign a paper every year so they can bill Medicaid for these services that they continue to try and cut and then bully me into a corner until I have someone else offer to pay for my attorney. There's a lot. I can't fit it all into 2 minutes. You guys were fed a lot of misinformation on Wednesday, and I hope you'll take time to listen to the parents here tonight, find other parents to talk to, so you get a full understanding of everything that we go through and the hardships we go through dealing with the school district with our special needs children. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. And I want to thank again everybody that spoke tonight. I want to thank everybody in the audience, but Dirk, Ella, Carrie, Megan, Carrie, and Kelly. It's really important for you to come up and to speak to the board. And we know that sometimes it can be difficult, but thank you very much for coming and speaking your mind. The board really does listen, and it really appreciates when you bring these issues forward. So I'll leave it at that, but thank you again. Move on to upcoming events. Director Mayfield, would you please read those for us? Sure, no problem.
February the 5th, 5:30 p.m. Committee of the Whole, ASC, Board. February the 7th, 4 p.m. Policy Committee, ASC, the Board meeting. February the 12th, 6 p.m. I'm turning my mic on there, it might be better. 6 p.m. regular meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. February 19th, annual Get on the Bus trip to Des Moines. February the 20th, 5:30, LSTAC, is that LASIK? Help me with that pronunciation.
LZIAC, yeah.
LZIAC. Local School Improvement Advisory Committee, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom. And February the 26th, 6 p.m., regular meeting, ASC, Jim Hester Boardroom.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board accept the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
I had a question on 7.02.
Do you want to remove it from the consent agenda?
Yep.
7.2?
Yes.
7.02. Okay, 7.02 has been removed from the consent agenda. It will be considered directly after the consent agenda vote. Is there any other discussion on the consent agenda? Director DeSalvo.
Just one quick comment. Marcia Tangent has submitted her retirement date. It's on this agenda. I regret that I will have to approve it, but I know there'll be more to come on this, but Marcia has helped me so many times get me data whenever I need it, and she's phenomenal, and we'll be able to fill the seat, but certainly not the person that filled it for so many years. So thank you, Marcia.
Any other discussion? I tell you, I'm going to comment also. I'm not sure that I want to approve it. I've had the great opportunity to know Marcia way before even I had an opportunity to be on the board. I've known her as a friend, as a colleague, and I've appreciated everything. I've appreciated her as a person, as a parent, as a CFO. And when I first heard this, I was stunned. I was sad. I was, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? There are a lot of real challenges, and yet I always wish the best for everybody, and I'm sure that this decision must be best for you, Marcia, because you've made it. But I think in the whole state of Iowa, I have to say that Marcia has conducted training sessions for Iowa school finance. Marcia has such an incredible understanding of school finance and especially of our district finances, and has guided us and guided the superintendent and the board through some of the past years with some very, very challenging issues that we've addressed. And I don't know what the future bodes for any of us in this, but my goodness, I'm not generally happy about this. I'm sad in a lot of ways, Marcia, even though you're kind of half smiling there, but I'm really serious, and I think the whole board and probably our whole district feels in a very similar way. So, but I wanted to thank you for all of your service and your guidance and everything that you've provided to all of us over the years. So I probably will vote for it because of other things, and probably because I'm assuming that you want to retire in June. And so I'll reluctantly vote yes. Is there any other discussion on the consent agenda? All right, then we will call for the vote. And this is the consent agenda other than 7.02, which is a change order, Cedar Valley Steel for $26,668. I'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And my vote, again reluctantly, is yes. Thank you. We'll move on to 7.02, change order. Is there a motion? Seeing, Director Beck.
I'm assuming I make a motion to approve the...
That would be the appropriate way
Yes,
to do it. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the change order for Cedar Valley Steel.
And for the amount?
Oh, in the amount of $26,668.88.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
I just had a question about this. This change order is because they had to add steel for something that was not on the print, if I read this right?
That was the genesis of it. I'd like to ask Eric to answer the particulars of this. There are a series of change orders on your agenda tonight and several others that were below the threshold that closed out all of the construction contracts for the Central Auditorium Pool and related projects. I wanted to take a moment and say that all of the change orders for the entire project combined come to 6.7% of the total construction budget for all of the work that was done there at Central. That's about $1.7 million. It's not inconsequential, but it's not, as a percent of the whole, what we would think extraordinary or beyond. We ordinarily would think 8-10% contingency for a project of this size would be ordinary. The other thing I'd mention is that there was a little over $1 million of change order requests submitted by the various contractors that were denied or negotiated away to lower amounts. So there was about $2.7 million total submitted. $1.7 million was approved. And I'll ask Eric to answer your questions about the details with Cedar Valley Steel.
Yes, it was for items not shown on the original prints.
Okay, so that would be Larson and Associates mistake?
The, it could be stated that way.
Because they didn't put it on there, so now we got to pay for it because he made the mistake.
And if it was on there, we would have paid for it in the original bid. So.
Right, and that would have been the actual number, and we would have known about
yes.
that. Okay. That's what I wanted.
Any other discussion? Okay, call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
That was me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why I put it under Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Reluctantly, I'm going to say yes. Larson and Associates should be paying this, but.
Okay, Director Potts.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of bills?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation for the adoption of bills for the bill listing periods of January 4th, 2018 through January 17th, 2018. Resolved, all claims presented to the board having been duly certified as correct by the secretary, reviewed by the administration and board members, and they are hereby audited and allowed as just claims and warrants drawn on the treasury for the several amounts. Further resolved, the payment of claims and salaries be approved as presented for the periods of January 4th, 2018 through January 17th, 2018, with the following voided check. Number 352241, payable to Learning Links in the amount of $100. This was the incorrect vendor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I, excuse me, Superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lily Hama is a Williams Intermediate 7th grader. She's a wrestler, and she won first place in the girls' novice division and was awarded the Amateur Athlete Union Winter National Champion belt at the AAU Winter Nationals in Omaha, Nebraska. This was January 6th. This was the largest national tournament in the Midwest with approximately 1,200 wrestlers representing 15 states in attendance. I'd like to point out some movement in the legislature in an area where we've really not seen any movement before. There's a Senate File 270. It's called Diversity Plans and Open Enrollment. It's a bill that was heard in subcommittee by Senators Sinclair, Bean, and Quimbach. And the bill would actually prohibit the 5 districts that currently have diversity plans, which is Des Moines, Davenport, Waterloo, West Liberty, and Postville, from regulating open enrollment out based on the diversity plan. The subcommittee at this point did not move the bill forward because they're looking for additional information. And Margaret Buckton from the UEN has actually provided information to the subcommittee and is asking us for some survey material to give them information. But should this come about, we would have to shut down. That would mean anyone who'd want to leave the district could leave the district. And currently we have a diversity plan which controls that somewhat. So we need to keep a look on that, and I'll keep you informed.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to other items requiring action. May I have a motion regarding public hearing and approval of 1,080 hours of instruction for the 2018-19 school year?
Mr. President,
Director Beck.
I move that the board approve the administration recommendation for a schedule of 1,080 hours of instruction time rather than 180 days for the 2018-19 school year.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We will now hold a public hearing on the approval of 1,080 hours of instruction rather than 180 days for the 2018-19 school year as published in the Quad City Times on January 11th, 2018. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing and hearing none, I now declare the public hearing closed. Is there any additional discussion on this matter? Director Beck.
Am I correct? This is the model we follow currently?
Yes, it is, and at one time there was only one district in Iowa not following it, and I'm not sure if there's anybody. It turns out to be the most flexible, and it just makes the most sense to us.
Any additional discussion? Director Mayfield.
So the 1,080 is representative of the same amount of time as far as days?
It would be if you went the number of hours per day, yes. Okay.
Any additional discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of the long-range facility plan?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board approve the administration's recommendation of the long-range facilities plan project framework as presented in SAVE and PEPL project lists.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Of course, you know where my questions are going to come from, but Mr. Maloney, I have an email that was sent to Principal Chelf at North High School on April 28, 2017, that advised him that the next school year that we would go out for bid and construction of their athletic facility would begin the summer of 2018. On the plan, it shows now this project has been moved to 2019-20. Can you tell me why?
Because the project budget originally started at an estimated $250,000, and it is now $720,000. We met with Principal Chelf District and North High athletic directors and staff and discussed what would be possible for the original budget, and at the conclusion of that discussion, the consensus of the athletic staff was that they would prefer to wait an additional year to have the facility in order that we could make additional funds available. And in order to fit that project into a series of other amendments made to the 10-year plan, we delayed it a year from its original schedule.
The original budget for those facilities for each high school was $450, not $250.
Yes, the original budget was $450. When the idea was first floated, it was suggested to us that a similar facility had been built in another district for about $250,000. We prepared a preliminary estimate and came up with a $450,000 project budget, and when we laid out precisely what that would buy with the staff planning to move it ahead in the coming fiscal year, is when we had the conversation with them that what could be bought for $450,000 really didn't adequately meet their needs, and they would prefer that we expand the size, the scope of the facility to something similar to a couple of examples that they gave. Once we did that, we come with a budget of $720,000.
Can I? So the $260,000 house we're going to buy basically took the additional money that we were going to use for North.
Well, I think that the combination of amendments that we are proposing fits everything in the plan that is among our current priorities as we understand them. And the acquisition of the house in question, the chiropractic office, is recommended because it became available for sale and was an opportunity that was unexpected.
That's all I have for now.
Any other discussion? Director Beck.
I guess I do have a couple of questions. I know, looking at the SAVE list of projects, I suspect we're going to have to answer some questions about some of these line items. For example, there's nothing listed for the line Garfield Pre-K and Multipurpose Edition, but there's a line in there. And I believe the Buchanan Traffic Safety and Parking is empty. And then, where was the other one? There are some questions about Washington Elementary, and some parents brought those up as well tonight because there's not anything listed there. And I know if we are going to, in the very near future, ask the public to weigh in on property tax levies, we're going to have to assure them that we are doing the right thing.
I should have hidden, there are a number of columns and lines that are hidden.
Okay.
And well, I'll take Garfield first. It should have been not displayed in the first column because the budget is outside the 10 years for that project. I have it going out 13, 14 years in order to project when all of the elementary pre-K addition, multipurpose room additions might be done. And because it wasn't in the 10-year window, that line should have been hidden.
Okay.
There's nothing in the plan here that suggests that Washington won't continue to be operated as an elementary school. Decisions that the board may make about repurposing or no longer using any particular campus as a school are not reflected in this plan in any way. They would not be reflected until after you had made that decision.
So would it be correct to say that the other two lines that I pointed out, the Buchanan traffic safety and parking and the Washington one, those are things that had budget, but it's beyond the 10-year window?
I need to check on Buchanan because I thought that it was
Okay.
was in, and I'll have to follow up on that and get you an answer because I thought it was in the next short term,
Okay.
fewer than 5 years. But and sometimes when we make the modifications, I'll make an error and either hide something or fail to show something. So I'll have to check on that. My apologies. But there, in the current overall plan, it is our expectation that absent direction otherwise, that each of the elementaries ultimately will have, or those that don't already have a dining hall that's on the main floor and a pre-K and so forth, that is in our long-range plan, is to equip all of our elementaries that are in service with a dining hall on the main level, a multi-purpose room similar to Fillmore, and with pre-K, as long as we have unserved pre-K students, we want to continue to provide more opportunities for pre-K.
Thank you.
Excuse me 1 minute. The superintendent would like to make a comment.
Thank you. I wanted to put in perspective the process. You know, this plan has been going on for years and years and years. And we've been working on this particular iteration probably for 18 months. We brought it to the committee of the whole, and there was a lot of discussion. I took a lot of notes, and it is in your memo, but I'd like to reiterate what we did to the plan based on what we heard you say. The Brady Street Stadium to 8 lanes, that was approved by the board. The North High School athletic facility, training facility was added, as was a West High School athletic training facility, and a Central Athletic, which would be coincidental with the baseball field relocation. A replacement equipment for the career technical education will be specifically in the plan. There'll be energy efficient measures, but they were reduced in order to match when we thought we could actually do the implementation. Classroom furnishings are increased over time and are specifically mentioned. Minor building improvements, we were concerned about restrooms. Those were increased. We were going to speed up the pre-K classroom as construction was done. We'd look and see if a pre-K classroom was warranted, and then the purchase of the chiropractic clinic. So I just wanted to reiterate, those are things we massaged, and they are now in here. And any changes you made, then you're going to have to be very specific on how we adjust this so we can finally get a plan out there that we can work from, a plan that we can change as needed.
Director DeSalvo.
Can I ask, is there any way that we could move that north facility up to what we had originally told them we would do?
By moving something else that's in the plan. It's
Can I
all
propose?
assembled based on year-to-year cash flow.
How could Central need tuck pointing? We just put 28 million into that school. What's left to be tucked?
Well,
I'm sorry, but I'm struggling.
It all started in 1905.
I know, but how did we miss that with everything we just did?
Well, we do a certain amount of tuck pointing at various buildings around the district each and every year, and it's kind of similar to roofs. It's an obligation that we will have ongoing forever. Given the average age of our buildings is about my age, over 65, we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of tuck pointing to do every single year, and there is several hundred thousand more that will need to be done at Central in the next 5 years or so. All of the George Marshall Gym building is another 2 or 3 years out. So it's just an ongoing obligation.
Can we swap the tuck pointing with the north additional money? Can we do
well,
200,000
the tuck pointing
in
is
tuck pointing?
necessary to take care of what's there. It's not something that's easily avoided or deferred. When it gets to a certain point of deterioration, it will only, the cost of repair will only increase the more it's deferred.
Is there any way else we could change that around?
By moving some other
The tuck
project
pointing.
in some other priority, some other line item in the plan.
Can I ask another question? What are we doing at the Brady locker rooms? I heard some
That was
lockers were-
completed this past summer. Lockers were replaced, painting, heating units were replaced in some cases and installed in others. There were actually some rooms that didn't have heat. LED lighting was installed. The concessions were relocated and re-equipped and so forth. This summer, we plan, as you approved a few weeks ago, to resurface the field, resurface the track, expand the track to 8 lanes, and make some exterior facade improvements to the west elevation, and the east elevation will get done when we relocate baseball.
There's just nothing else to go for. Well, I would just like to put in your thoughts as you go through this process. If something comes in a couple $100,000 less than you thought, which never happens, but I'm wishfully thinking, because we had budgeted $450 for North, and we needed an additional 2 something. If you can find 200,000, could we move that project up? I would strongly propose that. Just looking at the numbers Dr. Tate has provided us the second time. Thank you, Dr. Tate. I mean, I'm hearing from parents naturally because I had a child that went there. We've spent 52.4 million on Central, 20.8 on North, 11.1 on Mid-City, and 32.6 on West. So I feel like their time is here. I know our buildings are old. I know we've got to spread it, and I'm trying so hard to find a way to make this even. But I feel like they have been left out in the dust again, and I wish there were a way that we could make that happen as we had originally promised them. So anything you could do, your consideration would be appreciated.
Director Gosa.
I just had a quick question, or a couple of them. The tuck pointing at Central, what part of the building is that on? I mean, I'm just wondering because they were already there, already set up, so now you got to pay again for a job trailer, their equipment to come when they had already had it there.
Yes, there's only so much that can be done. This generally needs to be done during periods when the building's unoccupied, so we try to squeeze that in during the summer months. There's usually a little bit of overlap getting set up, and you saw some scaffolding that was there. In fact, during when school was in session, we have assessed the entire building. We have a project getting underway this year to complete assessments of the exterior envelope of all of the buildings, much like we did the roof plan the past several years, where we got an assessment of each and every roof and some idea of when they'll need to be replaced, and we're doing the same work with all of the exterior envelopes. We know that there is tuck pointing that needs to be done at multiple buildings. There will be the major project at Central next summer, along with several other smaller ones. We know there are window replacements. These are a number of the things that you'll hear in the discussion about the increase of the PEPL and its renewal. There are a number of things that are not in the plan for want of funds, but the tuck pointing is try to done in a way that's managed to do a certain amount of work every year, and the general condition costs are would be the same if the project went on for more months than if it was done in multiple bites. Of course, there's some mobilization costs.
They could have brought a different crew in to do that part of it.
Sure.
And then the other thing, so when they give their proposals, do they give you a proposal of this is what it would be if we did scaffolding, this is what it would be if we did JLGs, or that's up to their discretion? Because
means and methods is a contractor's discretion, and we could specify prescriptively, but often that raises the cost of doing a project. It's usually presumed that the contractor is best able to determine their means and methods, and that one contractor may bid scaffolding and another contractor may bid aerial devices, and that's really not for us to prescribe.
Right, I just didn't know, because I mean, I would think scaffolding would be more because you're renting all that scaffold. It's got to be paid to put up, or a JLG, you jump in that and go. And then my other question, you have in year 3 FY 2019 to 20 potential repurpose of a building, $750,000. What is that?
That's a placeholder. You will have a discussion. It has been on the 3-year or 5-year budget reduction plan to consider repurposing additional building. For the past several years, we have done a lot of work of late looking at our current enrollment capacity and our future projected enrollment. And so that will be a discussion that you will see recur on your multiple year budget plan.
Okay, so it's just there in case that if that issue comes up in 2019-20. To repurpose a building, and it's only $750,000. How much is the repurposing at JB costing? It's a lot more than that.
Yes, it's about $5 million.
Okay. Okay.
Director DeSalvo.
Again, can we find $200,000 in the JB project?
I'll be looking now.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I can ask. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Gosa.
Earlier when we were talking about the change order for Central, and I think you said we had $1.7 million in change orders, but they had put in $2.7 million were requested.
Yes.
So out of that $1.7 million, the project was mismanaged and the prints weren't correct. How many projects could we have done? Did that put us behind because of that?
Well,
I know that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I
for
wouldn't
you, but
approach the math that way, but obviously you could look at 1.7 and look at everything else on the list and say, what could that have gone to? Now, in addition to what we think were some deficiencies in drawings, there were also a number of owner-directed changes and additions. There were found conditions. There were a number of things to explain each and every dollar, which all of that documentation for those change orders has been presented. And you have several more on the agenda here that are the closeout of this project, and I'll remark on them individually when we get to them. But I wouldn't approach the math that way, but you could take the 1.7 and pick any project you like and say you could have done that instead of.
Okay. I was just more looking for how many projects that would have done. I wasn't looking for a specific project. Yeah, but thank you.
Any additional discussion? I've got a few items. Is there a sense of urgency to have the board approve this long-range facility plan tonight?
The only thing I would say to you is there are a number of things underway that the Brady Street Stadium, for example, and I would say no is the short answer.
Yeah, because I'm thinking things that are underway, kind of big deal. Before I say anything more, I wanted to say that I really appreciate the work of everybody that's been working on this. Obviously, there's a ton of work that goes into the long-range facility plan, both from the Pebble perspective and from the SAVE perspective. And I don't want any of my comments to be misunderstood that I'm opposed to specific projects. I think about revenue quite a bit, and we're talking 10 years out. And we've estimated revenue at least 10 years out, and in some cases beyond that, right?
Yes.
And I appreciate the superintendent's review of the board meeting where we discussed some of these issues. And the superintendent made a comment also about some possible legislation that could dramatically affect some of the revenues. Now, so some of that concerns me, and I think I've expressed concern about going too far out. You know, we project 10 years, and Director DeSalvo made a comment earlier talking about the north facility, and she used the language that we originally promised. And my sense is that we, the board, we, the district, we, the administration, get caught as we project out there. These are like, they're going to happen. So in years 7, 8, 9, whatever it is, and when it doesn't happen, I think then we're held accountable just because it showed up on a piece of paper. And so when we change priorities, it makes it really tough to change, I think, priorities in future years. And I've discussed it. Gesundheit. And so I've got mixed feelings about, I mean, I like to provide long-range planning. I think it's great, but I think it restricts us in ways, all of us, that might not be so good. So it's just a comment. The question was asked earlier about tuck pointing. And I thought about that, and I thought, we have certain standards in the district for, like, how many square feet do we have in an elementary gym? How many lumens do we have in a classroom? Things like that. Do we have specific standards for maintenance issues like that? You would agree that tuck pointing is really just a maintenance issue, or even PM, right? Do we have written standards for all of those things, or how do we make a decision? And I don't want you to go into detail, but the decision to do tuck pointing isn't a board decision. It's a decision that somehow you or the operations or administration make. Do you have a standard for that? Or do we, well, just describe it. I don't want to.
What we have tried to do, and of late, we started 3 years ago with an assessment of all of the roofs in the district, because we know it's $1 to $2 million a year every year forever for roof replacement. That's just based on square foot and 30-year life and that sort of thing. If you fail to do those, then you have collateral damage that you also have to pay for from leaks and structural decay and things of that nature. We have done all the pavements, sidewalks, playground, all the hard surfaces. We've assessed all of them and developed a pavement management plan. And we know what we currently spend and what we would have to spend to keep all of that system in good or better condition. If my memory serves me well, I believe we have the functional equivalent of 24 miles, I believe it was, of 2 lanes highway in hard surface, playground, parking lot, driveways, so forth. And we have a good estimate of what that would cost. We're this year undertaking to begin an assessment of all of the tuck pointing, so that we don't respond to the ones that are currently leaking, but we understand what are really the conditions of all buildings, so we can make a more thoughtful plan. We have other assessments of mechanical systems, electrical systems, and so forth that we try to use to help us, but we are working in a system where we have a number of priorities for the little over 19 million that we currently have coming in between SAVE and PEPL. And therefore, in addition to these major repairs and so forth, it's for additions and renovations and better science labs and all of these other things. When we began this work on the long-range plan 3 years ago, we determined that to get all of our buildings up to good or better condition and meet our current ed specs in a 10-year window would cost about $450 million in a time when we have 190 million coming in. So we have a lot of competing priorities, and those are reflected in your very discussion this evening. To have a 10-year framework, and we have referred to it as a framework only, a plan, and we also have made mention, I think, in most of our discussions with you, that each project that exceeds $130,000 is a discrete decision for approval by the board. And that's the reason that we bring them to you in advance to approve the budget, and then you have the opportunity, a public hearing to approve the 95% plans and so forth. And nothing on this list is a promise until you approve those 95% drawings and say, yes, you may bid. Until that moment, it's a framework, it's a plan, and to have the entire sequence of 10 years helps us to put into context what it might take to complete, for example, the elementary multipurpose rooms, and understand that in a larger perspective. We feel like that the shorter term projects are more certain, and the farther they out, the less certain they are, but none of them are certain until you have given that final okay in the public hearing. So they are discrete decisions by the board, one at a time, and this framework helps us to try to put priorities around the entire program.
And thank you for that explanation. You said that nothing is a promise. And then, but I wrote, but the public thinks it is. And so even though you express that anything over 130 is discreetly the board's decision, my belief is that the public, when they see this, they go, well, there we are. We're spending $270,000 in year 8 because that's what the board and the district said. And in fact, the board, if it approves this, says, yeah, even though that's in excess of the 130 and maybe out there in year 8, we say, no, we're going to change it. But then we get accused, as Director DeSalvo just pointed out, and she's in kind of a tough spot. She's been advocating for this and saying it's coming, and coming. And now we're saying, well, we're going to put it off another year. Maybe we put it off another year after that. Who knows? It's just an uncomfortable spot to be. I wish we could change that. Even if it was just put blanks down for year 9 and 10 or 8, 9 and 10 or whatever, even though the administration might say, here's our plan, but I don't know that we have to publicize it. Another thing that, and I love spreadsheets, you know that, but I usually use the auto sum function like everywhere. And one of the things that's hard for me when I look at these is to look at, especially some that were presented earlier, where we have expenditures, say, in year 2 or 3, and then in 7 and 9. And then I have to either manually go through or go through and add it up. How much are we spending on this specific school, on this specific project over that period of time? I was just wondering, as a matter of course, would it be reasonable to put a total function like in the year 11 area, where then we could see how much we're really expending? And as again, Director DeSalvo pointed out, it's so many millions at this school, that school, and it's just a question.
We handed out a report to you earlier before the meeting tonight that totaled by campus how much had been spent going back to the beginning of the penny tax, and then more recently including both PEPL and SAVE. And it's the data in that report is also cut in total by building, cost per pupil. It's cut a couple of different ways. We will be able to maintain that report for you, and we can present it annually or however it best meets your needs to show the total expenditure since SAVE began by campus.
And I appreciate that, but on a form like this, if we just change the font, it wouldn't take much more to put total expended by project, would it? And that's what I'm asking, because I understand the different cuts you're making, but understanding how much we spend on a specific project is sometimes informative as well.
Yes, and of course we drop off past years, and you wouldn't know that we have spent several millions at West the past 5 years, for instance, on the corridor renovations, the parking lot, things like that, because those prior projects are no longer shown on the spreadsheet for want of space. It already is not much readable in an 8.5 by 11 format, but we can present that data in whatever manner best suits the board's needs.
Okay, thank you. I will say as well that I didn't take enough time to evaluate all these, because my inclination is to evaluate every one of these line items. I don't intend to debate every line item, and I don't cotton to the idea of even suggesting, except for the one item that I have advocated, the one single item that I've advocated, which is that north project, publicly. I don't normally want to mess with that kind of detail, but I do want to take the time to consider these, and especially if there isn't a sense of urgency that you express, and you've already got projects ongoing, and I accept that. My intent tonight is not to move to postpone, but my intent is to vote no on the proposal to approve the long-range facility plan. And it's a personal thing, I just want to review some of the data a little bit more. Any other discussion? Okay, then we will call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
No.
Director Gosa.
No.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
No.
And my vote is no. Sorry, I'm trying to count all this. Yeah, if I've counted it right, it's 4 noes and 3 yeses, and the motion fails. Superintendent Tate.
So for the administration, this is disappointing. I have no guidance. I don't know what to do. Are you going to take it from here, or do we need to go and do something else because we need to get some work done?
At this point, my intent is to recommend to the Agenda Committee that it appear on the next regular committee meeting. My request was simply to have more time because I hadn't evaluated everything. So we'll bring it up to the Agenda Committee. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on. Is there a motion regarding approval of change order Northwest Mechanical? If there's no motion, then we will continue on. There's no motion.
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the change order for Northwest Mechanical Incorporated in the amount of $45,000.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Was that Director Beck? Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
This change order is for the catwalk around the pool, correct?
I'll ask Mr. Page to come up again. There were a number of credits and adjustments going both ways that got us to this amount. The total requested to close out Northwest Mechanical was $92,979. Eric spent a good bit of time with all of the parties and negotiated that to close out for $45,000. And it included, like I said, a number of adjustments and credits going both ways. And if there are any more specifics, Eric will answer for you.
And yes, that credit was a part of this.
Okay, just from reading the sheets, it says the contractor, the price changed because there was conduit, ductwork, and piping were already installed. So my question is, we hired Russell Construction as the construction manager. Aren't they supposed to manage how these projects go? Because essentially I would think you'd want to put your catwalk in, and then if you had plumbing and stuff, you would fix it to that, the underside of it, or however. But I would think any project I've ever been on, I've worked construction for 17 years. you have your meeting in the morning with the foremans. Hey, this is what needs to get done. Boom, boom, boom. So we're all not on top of each other. So this guy's not screwing this guy. And it seems like this whole project, the whole project, was nothing but everybody in everybody's way. It wasn't managed correctly. Because, I mean, that's a huge amount of money there. And there's been quite a few other change orders for. And I don't want to take away from you talking them down from the 90 whatever thousand to this, but it just seems that it just wasn't managed well altogether.
Well, you know that it was complex and there were a number of unusual circumstances. In this particular case, I think I would invite you to come and tour the boiler room and the location of that pool pack, and you can see what kind of complications were encountered in getting that whole thing set up the way that it is. There were a number of changes to mechanical drawings during for a number of reasons that also contributed to this. So our conclusion was that we owed Northwest Mechanical something, and we think they bargained fairly, and we got that down to what we believe is an acceptable cost.
And did you use the original subcontractor, or did they change subcontractors? Because it never really did verify, I guess.
On the catwalk, it did go through a different contractor.
Okay.
Part of the dispute was over which contractors should pay how much of the scaffolding for their use or their portion of the work.
Right, and that was one of the other parts because the project was delayed or something, the scaffolding, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Any other discussion? Director DeSalvo.
This is sort of in general of the other things coming up for vote, but are these the last of the change orders?
Yes, this closes out all of these contracts. There is still in dispute additional services charges claimed by the architect, and we're working through that now.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield. Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order for Davenport Electrical?
Mr. President,
Director Hayes.
I move the board approve the change order for Davenport Electrical Contracting Company in the amount of $67,645.47.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
I know we already covered this, but no one could say I didn't ask. This one, like right in the cover letter, it says the change orders for the additional expenses related to the delay of the project, the design difficulties, and then you had just said that the architect was trying to. It blows my mind. So this issue right here is kind of an architect thing. It was something wasn't on the.
It's a combination of all of the above, like it listed in the memo. It's the extended length of time. The project foreman was on site. He was on site from day one to the final days of the project. The complexity of the project and some of the design difficulties that, if you read the memo, there's some claims he spent more time with the plans designing and helping getting through all the difficulties instead of he was supposed to be a working foreman, and he ended up just being a supervisory foreman to make sure his people were in the right places at the right time.
Okay.
Amongst the staff and the project team, we should express our gratitude to DECO for the extra effort they put in, and if anyone is due additional compensation for the effort extended, Davenport Electric is that company.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
My vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of change order for Swanson Construction?
Mr. President,
Director DeSalvo.
I move that the board accept the administration's recommended to approve the change order from Swanson Construction in the amount of $71,216.07.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
I'm assuming this falls on the same line, but again, I appreciate you guys getting the cost down. I mean, it's a very hard pill to swallow being an elected official when people are always on you about spending tax dollars and that on this stuff. And if we don't ask the questions, then, hey, why were you silent about that, da-da-da, and stuff like that. And this just goes to show we really need to look at our responsible bidder stuff and stuff like that so we eliminate some of these issues.
This too was an all of the above kinds of causes. There were all of the things that we've already described to you and needn't take your time with. This CO change order request was for $113,621. Eric has spent a good deal of the last 6 or 8 weeks working on getting these closeout change orders and trying to negotiate them all down, and I am actually pretty proud of the work that he did getting these closed out.
Any other discussion? Director Mayfield.
I'm just curious, not being not experienced in the building. Is there actually a listing of, because I really, even when I'm voting, whether yes or no, I don't know the details of what I'm voting for.
In your board packet, we ordinarily include multiple
It's all this
pages
stuff
of all of the contract. There are emails and lists of every item the contractor is claiming that is attached to each of these change orders. And it can be kind of mind-numbing detail sometime, but it is all provided there. There is a substantial greater amount of documentation available for each of these. All of the project records were kept in a computer database, something called Submittal Exchange. And there are literally hundreds of thousands of documents related to this project that are in Submittal Exchange and all are public record. We try to give you all of the germane items to a particular change order without burdening you with even more stuff that is available. But you're welcome to come by our office individually at any time and say, I'd like to really see all of the detail of what went into this particular change order.
Well, I think he just showed me what's below here, so there is more detail below. But prior to him showing me that, I never scrolled down far enough to see that you have more detail. Otherwise, I'm basically seeing a lump amount and going by what you say that is necessary.
And I can tell you, we go over this stuff, multiple persons, both the CM team, Eric and I have pulled out literally receipts where somebody went to Menards and bought screws and also bought Pepsi, and I crossed the Pepsi out and send it back to them.
Nice.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Director Gosa.
One last thing. So this is the last change order for this project. Do we own all the designs and prints and everything for this? That if something needs to get done later on, we're not having to pay somebody else to redesign it and all that?
Yes, the ownership of instruments of service clause in Mr. Larison's contract was amended by Mr. Davidson at the board's request back at the beginning of this project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I've got one question. These change orders, they seem pretty, I don't even know how to describe them. This is just work that had to get done.
Yes.
Is the way I interpret it. But the one thing I was wondering, and I've been wondering about a lot of our projects, does any of the work that we approve in a change order result in additional costs to the district, say in terms of operation expenses or something like that? You know, when we build an auditorium, we have additional costs in terms of cleaning and heating and all that. I don't look at these change orders from that perspective, but when you think about the change orders, are there additional other expenses besides the change orders that are affecting the district budget?
Ordinarily, we might find that there are change orders that result in future savings. We might find something in design where a mechanical unit is unserviceable, literally, and say, no, that has to be relocated. And then there would be a change order cost because that unit ends up being moved from where the designer drew it, but we've requested that because you can't get to that unit and service it. And I could give you specific examples, but I think you get the idea.
Sure, thank you for that explanation. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director DeSalvo.
I'm going to abstain.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Beck.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. And my vote is yes. Motion carries. Thank you. May I have a motion regarding approval of lease term?
Mr. President.
Director Beck.
Sorry, I had it right here. There it is. I move that the board approve changing the lease term with Darren Overbrockling for 57.2 acres at the West Kimberly Athletic Complex from a 1-year term to a 5-year term.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Director Gosa.
This is right out by the West Baseball Complex, correct?
Yes.
So surrounding, and this would be for a 5-year plan. And when are we doing the central baseball fields?
2021, I believe it's FY 2021. You
Okay.
could look on the spreadsheet.
And we had to completely redo the thing, right?
Yes, a new field will be built on the north side of 36.
So I'm just gonna ask this: how come we've never looked at making that our baseball softball complex for all of our high schools and putting all of our fields out there?
I don't know that we have or have not. Maybe Mr. Scott has recollection of that.
I don't know the question because I was looking this up for Dr. Tate.
Sure you were.
She was.
So with the field that he wants to lease for 5 years, where the West Baseball and Softball Complex is, and we're going to be moving the Central Baseball, and I was wondering if we've ever discussed moving and making that our baseball softball complex for all of the high schools, so they're boom right there.
I would think having one facility for baseball and softball with the multiple levels to get the games in would be extremely difficult. We have 3 teams at all levels, and the game dates are the same night, and so we would to guarantee somebody was on the road, but we'd always have 2 teams that would have to play. So I don't know how we would ever do it with one baseball facility.
No. I'm saying move the fields out there. Have
Oh,
the
you mean
fields
all
for each
3?
high school out there, their respective fields, and that'd be our baseball softball complex.
Again, it's just that asking right now, my first answer would be at a long way for our students to travel because they're going outside of their own boundaries of.
But they go out there to play when they play each other, right?
But for a home stadium, that's their home. That's within West boundaries. So that's their home stadium, whereas North would not have their home stadium inside of North boundaries. and Central wouldn't have it within their, so if their families, everything are traveling farther. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, I'm just telling you, that's my first answer, is that their facilities would be outside of their boundaries.
Okay. I was just curious. I mean, Brady Street, everybody's there, so I didn't know why. I mean, that's a lot of land out there. I was just curious and asking.
Yeah, I guess all three. I mean,
because if you built the facility, you'd built a parking lot and everything else. I mean, parking and everything wouldn't be an issue. That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Director Beck.
Just one point. I think, wouldn't we have to build 3 complete sets of facilities so each team had their own home fields?
But we're already going to be doing that for Central.
True. Okay.
Any other discussion? One thing I was going to suggest is that if you want a further discussion, you might ask for that as an agenda item. I was curious what the year-to-year rental is out there right now. We're talking about $250 for 5 years.
Yeah, it's currently $250 an acre.
So what is the benefit to us as a district by obligating ourselves to 5 years instead of 5 single years?
I don't know that it changes the economic calculus. I suppose it gives us certainty that that revenue will come in. He could any year to year decide not to farm it, I suppose, but his intent is to put some drain tile in, and he believes he would need to know that he had 5 years of crop revenue in order to justify the expenditure.
I understand that, and I was curious if the drain tile does that benefit the district in any way, and does it potentially cause any problems with future development?
There are several drainage hazard areas on the site currently designated, and they're not shown on your map there, but we have to report on them every year. And any improvement of the drainage, I suppose, could be beneficial to us in the future if we were to develop there. But the financial proposition remains the same, $250 an acre.
And I'm just thinking, I don't think there's anything in here that talks about how the drain tile is going to be installed, because there are a lot of different ways to install that. A lot of them include gravel and other things that go into there, and I'm just wondering about, is it a benefit or not to the district? And I understand that he would want the 5-year commitment. If we did make a decision to develop, is there any way out of that commitment, the way the contract would be written?
Well, I suppose that he would want a pro rata on his investment cost or something if you got out early, unless you determined that you had economic benefit from that. One thing I would mention is that we would require him to submit a development plan and show us precisely what his installation method was and what kind of tile it was and all of those sorts of things.
How strongly do you feel that we should go ahead and approve this?
I don't feel strongly about it. There's no indication that he wouldn't continue to farm it year to year. He believes his yields would increase if he did the tile improvements, and that's what would justify the investment.
Absolutely. And I agree. It would most likely improve his financial perspective. The $250 an acre is probably reasonable. I wouldn't contest any of that. I don't like the idea of committing ourselves to a 5-year commitment when we don't benefit. And that I feel uncomfortable with the idea that unless there's a way, I would hope there's a way for us to get out under certain conditions, even if it is prorating that tile And I don't know how much tile he's going to put in, but it'll be whatever, 10 or 15,000 bucks probably. And if we did decide to do something like Director Gosa was saying, but we had to put it off because we were committed to a farming operation, I'm just uncomfortable with that.
If it was your direction, we could capture the cost and write the pro rata into the lease, so there would be certainty about what that would be should you want to end the lease before the 5-year term.
Yeah, and I don't want to quibble over the dollars and all that, but providing an out would be something I would hope for. I'll leave it at that. Director Beck.
I guess I would say to that, even if we were to start development on something here tomorrow, I think it would be probably 2 to 3 years before anything was actually completed or even broken. Does that make sense? So
They're doing the baseball fields in 2021.
oh, that's true. 2021. That's only 2 years out from now. Still, a couple years out. Is there any way in which, so we get to approve the way the drain tile is put in and any changes that are made before it's done?
Yes.
So is there any way you see that it might do more harm than good? Or, I mean, generally speaking, I would think adding drainage is a good thing no matter what you're going to do with the property in the future.
Yes, I thought it was a financial wash, that our circumstances doesn't change. It was my belief.
And it might actually help us if we don't have to do the drain stuff ourselves later on.
Without having a particular development proposal, I really couldn't say whether it would have to be redone or could be used or what.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Director Mayfield.
Well, it sounds like you could have the best of both worlds if it's a 5-year contract with provisions for proportionally buying it out if necessary. And yet he would have what he's seeking. At least the 5-year intent is there, but at the same time, he doesn't lose anything if the district decides to take it over in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll call for the vote. Director Beck.
Yes.
Director DeSalvo.
Yes.
Director Mayfield.
Yes.
Director Gosa.
Yes.
Director Hayes.
Yes.
Director Potts. Yes. And my vote is no. The motion carries. Thank you. We have a discussion item on the SBRC. Superintendent Tate, you want to open that discussion?
We'll do it in two parts. Marcia's going to talk a little bit about our next appearance before the School Budget Review Committee, and then I want to talk somewhat about our budget outlook. So, Marcia.
The next hearing date for the School Budget Review Committee is Tuesday, March 13th, and we need to put in a request to appear at the School Budget Review Committee. The board will need to approve that request, and that request and the exhibits are due to the School Budget Review Committee by Friday, February 9th. I have had a discussion with the liaison to the SBRC, and they said that they would be somewhat flexible for us if we couldn't meet the deadline of the 9th, but not by a great amount of time, but I think they would give us several extra days if we needed it. Once again, we have to provide them exhibits. They give us the templates of the information that they want from us. Basically, it's a 5-year plan, and we have to show how we're going to have a positive unspent balance and how it's sustainable over 5 years. We have to provide them comparison of staffing levels, expenditures, unauthorized budget report, income, miscellaneous income, several items, and then go into detail on how we're going to put the plan into place. They are requesting that we appear in person. They would like to have us there. And what we will be requesting is a modified supplemental amount for the negative balance that we had at the end of the 2017 school year, which was $4,056,340. And again, when I spoke with the liaison to the SBRC, they suggested that we work with either the IASB or ISFIS on using one of their tools for a 5-year projection model. And we have been in contact with Larry Sigel and Margaret Buckton, and they are going to assist us in that 5-year plan.
Thank you, Marcia. So we'll be providing you with the information that we need to have you approve before we go to the SBRC. I want to remind you, we've been working with a 5-year plan for quite a while. We're going to refresh that, and it's going to have to show increased class size. It's going to have to show reduction of personnel. It's going to have to show a restructuring of the district. We're still a district that looks like about 18,000 students with the number of buildings we have, and we can't look like that anymore. We've lost 1,000 students in 10 years. Last few years we've lost 400 students, so we just need to look different. I've got a group right now working on, and the 5-year plan already showed that we are going to look at a system of schools that have pre-K or kindergarten through 6th grade. So talking about taking the 6th grade out of the intermediate schools and returning them back to the elementary schools. That would leave then a system of schools with 7th and 8th grade, and then the high schools would be 9 through 12. We will show fewer buildings than we have right now, and we're working right now to assure that we have the room. We're taking inventory to do exactly what I just described, but I want to alert you and the public to know that we will be looking at a system which has pre-K, if we can get them in there, kindergarten through 6th grade in the buildings. That will allow us to reduce personnel as well as buildings. We're also looking at regions of administration, so we might take several buildings and put together to have one principal, for example, or one principal and associate principal, so that we don't have a principal in every single building. But we'll bring a plan to you. We're calling it Vision 2020. And it's going to be a complete plan that shows you from the get-go exactly what it's going to look like for the next few years, so the public will know in its entirety. We're not going to go year to year, and it'll show you any recommended school relocations or repurposing of schools at the time. I'm not ready to do that yet because, again, I have people that are actually going out and making the inventories of schools right now. So when I come to you, I can assure you this will fit. This is the way that I recommend that we work. But what it's got to do, it's got to reduce our negative unspent balance and put us in a positive in the next few years. So that's what's coming. I'll work with the agenda committee to decide exactly when we'll do that, but again, it's going to be an overarching plan.
Any discussion? Director DeSalvo.
Is it unusual for an in-person meeting for this?
No.
Okay, I thought maybe you had kind of alluded to that. Okay. And then your Vision 2020, since we have to have exhibits to them by February 9th, is that moving that quickly for us too?
Well, those exhibits are fairly broad. They have personnel and things of that nature, so I won't have to be that terribly specific at that time, but I want to give you enough so you know where we're going, so that you're not buying a pick and a poke.
Thank you.
Director Beck.
Just out of curiosity, how does special education budgeting figure into all this? Because I know we had a huge increase in our budget for special education last year that we had to account for and request money for. So are we including that as well, potential for increases in that?
That has already been approved. The special education deficits goes to the School Budget Review Committee in December.
Right.
And so last December, they already approved the amount that we had for the year before.
But are we accounting for the fact that we may have increases in the future like that? I know we had a lot of students come in from across the river and, changes in salaries and restructuring. So given that they don't have to guarantee us that money,
They don't have to guarantee us that money, but there hasn't been a year that we haven't gotten it.
Okay.
And so special ed is kind of contained in itself, that whatever deficit it is that they incur, the School Budget Review Committee automatically gives us that amount of spending authority back.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, the department is also looking at the structure to make sure that they've got the most efficient structure, because we're just not going to say, well, special education will spend what we need. So that will be part of the Vision 2020.
Anything else? Following up on Director Beck's questions, though, wasn't this past year the first year that we had the additional stipend for special ed teachers? And so you said it was approved for last year based on our request. And then you said that they typically do that, but they aren't required by law to approve it.
I don't believe they're required by law, but I have yet to see where they have not approved a deficit for the spending authority.
I understand. It's just that what happened last year was, I think, unique in the whole state, wasn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so maybe I just don't have the same confidence in the SBRC that you do. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll go ahead, and I guess that was just a discussion item. That's the end. Superintendent Tate, are there any administrative reports?
There are none.
There are a number of board requests. I think there are 4 of them. First is from Director Hayes, an agenda item request dated today. A group of special need mothers question the possibility of a parent committee. Purpose of this committee would be to work with the special education department and develop strategic ways to assist. This method has been tested and tried in Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? A few parents attended the committee of the whole meeting last week and walked away expecting something different. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information or agenda item? By the 18-19 school year. Next is a request from Board Member Gosa dated today's date. I would like for the Special Education Department to have several forums throughout the school year for special ed parents to voice concerns as well as gather information. And this was not agenda item or information request.
I didn't.
No.
Can I circle agenda? Or I guess, what would it be?
I don't know, because you're asking for forums, so I'm willing to let the agenda committee interpret it. Why are you requesting this information or item? I think it's important to ensure that our special ed students are receiving the service they require to be successful. Is there a second?
Second. See which one he takes on that. He gets us mixed up all the time.
When would you like this information? As soon as possible. Next item is requested by Director Gosa, date of request today. Agenda item, discuss the possibility of moving our baseball and softball complexes for each high school to one location. Why are you requesting this information or agenda item? I think it would be beneficial to have the fields in one location as we do the football stadium. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information or agenda item before moving the central baseball field? Last request is from Director Gosa, today's date. Agenda item, I would like the special ed department to put on a mock IEP meeting. Why are you requesting this information? I feel it's very important for the board to understand how the meetings work and what they look like from selecting the committee to the actual meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
When would you like this information? As soon as possible. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Oh, excuse me, is there a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.